Hello. How is everyone? It is already May. I don't know if, like me, you are surprised at how quickly time has gone. I am a little shocked. So I hope you all are doing well. I want to make sure that this is working. Okay. So, hi, happy May. I am super excited. So, I have seen and had several questions lately about letters of recommendation. And whether it be scholarship wise that students are applying for, or summer programs, or programs for the upcoming school year, or it's your letters of recommendation for your students who are going through that college application process, making sure that you follow the some really simple steps can help make sure that the person writing that letter is going to be able to give you the letter that is the best possible. So I call it's almost like an information package for or packet for the person who's writing your letter. So several different things that go with this. One is I encourage students to write a letter to the recommender before they even start to write it, just saying, thank you so much for being willing to write this letter for me. Now, let's take a step back for a second, because before your students are even giving this information to the person who's writing the recommendation, you really want to make sure that they are going to be able to give that whoever it is that you're asking, can they give a positive recommendation? Chances are, in the majority of cases, they're going to say yes, they are completely happy with giving a positive recommendation. But you don't want to have a recommender who ends up saying, who writes a letter that maybe isn't as good of a quality of another letter. And we want to make sure that that person is going to be able to write about your student in the best light possible. Some of that is going to be the information that's included in that information packet or package that you are going to give to the person writing the recommendation. But some of that also is going to be some information, and just making sure that that positive relationship is what your student is expecting it to be. So first asking, will you write a letter of recommendation? Now, one thing to be careful of as students are sending, emails, they are sending communication, they're filling out applications, and they go ahead and they put that person's email address in as far as that, this is who I want to be my reference. Many times, because applications are so quick to jump in, it's something where the person who is receiving the email request, they're going to go ahead and get that. So at the very least, have the student, before they hit submit on that application, to send an email to the person and say, hey, I'm going to be filling this out this evening. If it's in the evening and that person might not be checking their email, just say, I do have you on the list. If that's something, that is not okay, please let me know. But it's always better to err on the side of caution and try to ask early. Now, if you have someone who is, we've talked with the recommender ahead of time, the person that, the students feel like they are in the best, that they are the best person to write that potential recommendation. And they've agreed and said, yes, I'll write a positive one. So now we want to give them this information packet. And the first thing that I would have in that packet would be a letter thanking the recommender. Thank you so much for being willing to take the time to do this for me. I greatly appreciate it. Here is some, I've put together a packet of information so that you can have everything that you need to write the best letter possible. All right. So the other thing that you want to include in that letter is just telling the recommender if there are certain things that you want to make sure that they highlight. So I'm going to go through talking about extracurriculars and resume and that kind of thing. But you really want to just say, thank you so much for being willing to write this letter. Just so that in my essays and as I talk about activities, these are some of the things that I want to highlight. And for my teacher recommenders, I am going to ask that, if you can just please make sure that you make mention of ABC. Maybe it is something special that you have done, some kind of activity. Maybe it is specific to how you were in that person's class. As a school counselor, if you're asking them for a recommendation, maybe that is something to the effect of, throughout the time that I've worked with a student, here's how they've grown, or here's how they have shown some experience with a specific area in as far as they're exploring their interests for careers. So, several different things. That's where students can highlight what they are most interested in. And what they really want to make sure that that recommender addresses. So the next thing is going to be, I would now, counselors are going to be able to access your historical grades for courses that you took on that high school campus. For teachers, they're not necessarily going to be able to see that. And so one of the things that I would encourage students to do is to have, even if it's an unofficial, a copy of their transcript, their application packet or in their information packet, so that students can say, you can see a copy of my grades. If they've taken any kind of extra classes, maybe through a community college or something like that, you can have that on there as an unofficial transcript. Counselors and staff, as they're writing those letters of recommendation, they are not going to actually be able to see what students have completed in the application. All they're going to be able to see is the information that is related to their specific recommendation, particularly if your school is using something like Naviance. So that's going to all be private information, and the counselors are going to need as much as possible, and the teachers just that's easy to access, so that they are writing and giving as much detail as they can. So and I'm looking over at some of my notes, if you see me looking off, I tried to highlight some of the things that I normally talk through. So that recommendation packet, one of the things that we want to include is a resume. So don't assume that counselors know about every single thing or teachers know about every single thing that students are doing. Now, it could end up being that the person who's writing that letter was your English teacher, and they also were the club sponsor for a specific club that students are in. And if so, that's fantastic. But don't always assume that they know what you did over the summer or your activities in a different club or something like that. So having a resume to kind of talk about, this is my progression and these are the things that I have done. And then also being able to just to make sure that the details are there, having a brag sheet. Now, let me preface all of this by saying, whatever your school policy is for your student, make sure that you're following that. If there is a certain procedure that the school wants you to follow with requesting letters of recommendation, or there is something specific that they want you to fill out, absolutely do that. We want to make sure that you really are following those directions to the letter, because one, that's going to help as far as completing applications, and so that colleges are seeing what you're doing and it's good practice. But two, you want to make the process of the person who's writing that letter as easy as possible, because if they have to come back to you to try and get more information, or there's something else that they're looking for, or you didn't give them everything, that makes a difference. So academic and teacher references, that's something where you're going to talk about, be able to talk about what you have done in that particular class or area. And then with the counselor recommendation, that's where, as a counselor, I ask for students to complete a brag sheet as part of that application, that information packet for me as a recommender. And so what I ask for students to include are things like, what are your strengths? What are your areas for growth or weaknesses? And again, I'm looking off to make sure that I tell you all the things that I ask for. Are there any adverse situations that students have had to deal with that have impacted their high school experience? That could be anything from a medical issue that comes up. Maybe they had a class where they didn't do as well as they wanted. How did they persevere through that? How did they end up taking action so that they could do better in their upcoming classes? Was there a specific situation where we don't always have that every single student and every single teacher that they have is a good fit? Now, this isn't complaining about the teacher, and you don't want to complain about a teacher or anything like that in your essays, but we do want to make sure that students are letting someone know if maybe you had a grade that was a little bit lower than normal. And so being able to address that so that the school counselor can speak to it, as well as you being able to speak to it in that letter. The other thing is extracurricular activities that students have participated in, whether that be at school or outside of school, especially if it's outside of school and the staff have not necessarily seen students participate in that way. The other thing is that I ask students for is adjectives of how they would describe themselves. So tell me about yourself. What are you looking for? And how would you want me to describe you? And then are there other things that students have overcome, awards that they have received, the thing that they are the most proud of in their high school career? If there is something specific they've done as far as learning about their potential career or majors. And then, and this kind of goes back to different adverse things that have happened, but is their academic record a true reflection of their abilities? Because that's a place, again, to be able to say, you know what? I was dealing with some things. Maybe, again, maybe it was a health issue. Maybe it was a mental health issue that the student was dealing with. And these are the things that I have done to be able to address that. And here's what I overcame. And here is how I got through that and persevered. So those are a couple of different things. And then if there's just anything else that you want that person to share as the recommender. And so if there's something specific that you want that person to address, make sure you include it. If there's something they know about you that you don't want included, make sure that you tell them that too. If maybe there was an adverse situation, but it's not something that you are ready to discuss, and that's something that you feel like you want to be able to talk to the admissions committee on your own time. So those are some of the things that I would encourage you to include with that brag sheet. And the other thing that I ask for is for the parents to also share a little bit of information with me. So I want to hear from the parents about what is how would you best describe your child? So those adjectives. What have you seen are your child's strengths? What have you seen as your child's weaknesses? And then what are some things that you have been proud of your student as they have taken those things on? And then are there any issues that you think are important for that recommender to know about? So the more detailed information that you can provide to the recommender, the better letter they can write. And that also goes back to the more time that you can give the recommender. You want a minimum of 2 to 4 weeks. It's something that right now, juniors, you honestly could go ahead and you could start having a conversation with the people who are going to be recommending. And you can go ahead and say, hey, I want to get on your radar. I would love for you to write me a letter of recommendation for next school year if you're willing to write that positive letter. And then you are on that person's radar so they know that when we're starting back to school and once things settle down, that you're going to be coming to them with this information packet to write that best letter possible. So those are some of the things that I would recommend for you, or to be aware of as you are asking for those letters of recommendation. If you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out to me. One thing that I want to make sure that you all know about, and I've talked about this a little bit, is that I have a brand new guide for students and parents, and it's all about the 10 mistakes that you are making in the college search. So if you go to my website, it's confusedtoready.com/1010 mistakes. And you can download a free copy of that. I also have completely redone the entire website. And so if you go to, so that's how you can download the free guide. But if you go to confusedtocollegeready.com, that is our free guide. So the free guide is the 10 mistakes, then the confusedtocollegeready.com, that is our brand new website with a lot of great information for you. I hope this has been helpful. We will continue to give some great information, and I am actually going to be doing some webinars in the next couple of weeks. And we'll talk more about where your students should be focusing as juniors. And then I'm going to have a separate one for sophomores and then for our current freshmen. So have a fantastic evening. Bye for now.